The ultimate gift is immortality. You're immortal. Basically means that you do whatever you want. You can outlive anything and everything you want. But you're an immortal who feels pain. So you're shot, stabbed, yeah, you don't die, but you feel all that pain. You feel yourself regenerating. So while you're regenerating, you're also in pain. So it's an immortal that has the human sensories. That makes any sense. So essentially, these immortal creatures, right, are not given the tree of knowledge because you can't get both. Either you're immortal or you know things for a period of time. You do whatever it is you have to do with that period of time to be success in making your goal happen, helping others find their goal, right? Or helping them solve their goals. That's every life cycle has purpose in that sense, right? So the story of Adam, right, Atomos, right, is a thing or creature or whatever you want to call it, or a human being or son of God, whatever it is that you decided to call it. He is an experiment of what happens when you give a mortal an endless amount of knowledge as long as they're willing to seek for it. So that's our experiment. We're mortals. We're aware. We have the knowledge that we know that we're mortals. So since we know that we're mortals, we tend to live life in a certain perspective. Because it's basically the only way for you to sustain yourself in the long term. Because if you don't sustain yourself now, what ends up happening is that you tend to push yourself back. So every time you push yourself back, you also put the conscious level of whatever consciousness you're part of, you also set that conscience back. It's a step backwards. Instead of making things better, you actually made it worse. You're not improving the system, essentially. Because essentially what every being wants to be is to live for a very long time. The point is not to be immortal. The point is to be mortal for a period of time for you to be satisfied with what your goal is. Like you want to meet that goal. But you got to be realistic with your goals. Because essentially you have goals and those goals contribute to everything. Everything essentially only contributes to one goal. And it's for whatever it is that you're searching for, right? I'm going to tell you mine because it's for you, right? So whatever goal you're desiring, right? Or whatever you think is your desire or your purpose in life, you have to meet that goal before you're taken out, right? That's why essentially some people live for longer than others. Some people's purpose is a little different. You know, sometimes you're just here to do whatever it is that you decided to do. So sometimes, sometimes the hardest things to learn is that everything is not a lesson. That it's not a lesson to certain things because sometimes you know the outcome of it, so it's not a lesson. It's more of a reassurance. It's more like, okay, I'm gonna see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is my theory. Let's let the ball break. If I roll this ball down this hill, eventually it's gonna reach a point, right? It's just gonna stop because once it hits the bottom, it can only go so further with the energy that it picked up going down the hill. That's essentially what your life is. You come into the world and you're a ball rolling down the hill, and essentially you're gonna run out of this kinetic energy, if I'm mistaken, is the term that we use in physics. But eventually you're gonna run out of that energy. And eventually you just kind of come to a stop. And but then there's some of them that they figured this out, right? So what they do is that their lifetime, right? You throw the ball enough energy, right? That it's gonna go up this hill. It's gonna go down and up. Then it's gonna go down and up and over 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 again. until it reaches to a point where there's no more hills, or the hill's too high that it can't climb, so it tends to roll back. That's what technically what they define as going backwards. So when you put energy into something that doesn't give you a reward to keep moving forward, that's moving backwards or in reverse. But sometimes people go in reverse because the universe kind of kicks your ass and be like, "Hey, Brady, you didn't learn what we were supposed to learn at this time, friend, and you decided to skip it, or you decided to do something else. So we have to go back and figure this one out because you went off on a crash course, and now you don't even know what the fuck is your purpose. Now you're just wondering. But if you wander for too long, you end up getting lost, right? If you get lost, then it's kind of hard to come back." Especially because if you don't know where you're going, then what the fuck? Where's your sense of directions? Right? You eventually, again, go down a path that it's kind of, again, you're going to go downhill, you're going to pick up all this energy, you're going to invest all this time. Then you're going to end up finding that you're going to go top of this hill, you're not going to be able to go over it, then you're going to roll back. Then you're going to be like, wow, why do I have to start from scratch? Fudge chocolate chip cookies. It's like, damn. That sucks. I'm sorry you're going through that, but that's your reality. That's your new coming, essentially, of a rebirth. Technically, that's not even the rebirth. That's technically winter, because you go down to the bottom where it's coldest. So you go to the cold months, and you gotta climb yourself up. Basically, you gotta reach spring, then you gotta reach summer, then you hit the fall, which is if you go over the hill, which is the fall. Then you hit winter. You go up again. The cycle continues. You can keep going down that pattern. What you end up finding is that your energy always is transferring, but it's transferring in the right rate. Quote unquote, the right precision, right? Using the right amount of force in the right place. You're going towards the point of where your goal is. Whatever it is that you define your goal. It's what I understand, how things are really supposed to work. In the simple terms of more of what the molecular side is looking at it. That's the way they move. So maybe that's a rhythm. Maybe that's why we have so much problems, especially with the human body. There's no natural rhythm. A lot of people forgot their rhythm. But just think about it, your heart yourself. People have like blood pressure issues because again they're not harmonized. I think blood pressure issues comes from people not being harmonized with their body and soul. The body and soul are moving a certain are vibrating at different levels. So you're vibrating at different levels, then that means there's not what's called the band is not playing together. If the band's not playing together, then how do you think it's gonna happen? Music's gonna sound like shit. That's essentially what you're gonna sound like. You're gonna sound like shit. You're going too fast. You're going too slow. You're going at an irregular rhythm. If you go out of an irregular rhythm, then what do you think again is gonna happen? You're gonna go down with the sickness. But just remember, something is always watching you. The immortal watches the mortal, and the mortal watches their immortal. But what happens is that the mortal remembers you. The mortal is kind of hard to keep track of immortals, because the stories eventually gets lost. And when they call it, basically what is it they call them now? Tales. Tales or stories or taboos or cults or those you can't name, or I don't know, as much as fucking shit that they could possibly call it, but you know what I mean. Those people are out there. You know, some of us know it. That's the weird part. You know, the problem is like it's not weird, but it's like how can you prove it? You know, like that's the hard part. Because it takes a lifetime to prove it. You know. Then again, by the time a lifetime ends, you eventually end up finding that everything you learn and everything you know, unless you like really well documented, like it's kind of hard to bring it all at once, or a place where like it makes sense. That was another shit. It's kind of hard to make sense of a lot of shit. It's like it's hard making sense of it. It's like, and then it's even harder if you try to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand everything you already understand and everything you would describe yourself. And like it's kind of like, and then you just start explaining certain shit, and then you got like any certain sources, and then you keep going down this path, and you're like explaining all of this, right? But the thing is like, who's gonna really sit down and like and listen to you? That's another shit, because you also gotta remember that like nobody wants to fucking, like most of the time nobody wants to hear the truth, right? You want to hear tales or stories, but they don't really want to know it's true, because that ruins their basically their life, right? Their sense of realism basically becomes ruined, because now you awaken this new thing in their mind that is like, hey, okay, I really like this, blah blah blah, and then it's like, well, blah 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 is not actually blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. The origin is this, and this is what it really means. And there you go. Now it's ruined. Right? Oh, hey, I love this that I'm eating, and then you're like, okay, maybe you shouldn't eat that because blah blah blah, and then blah blah blah, and they're like, whoa, why you said that? That's a lie. And then some people sometimes tell you, why do you have to know this for? Like, why? How does it make your life better? I don't know. I just want to know. Like, what's wrong with knowing? It's not even I don't know. It's like I don't want to make the mistakes of my ancestors. So we gotta look at searching for knowledge. Searching for knowledge so I don't make the same mistakes as my ancestors. And pick up who's the actual threat. It's like, there's a lot of shit too. It's like a lot of people stop wondering that they live in a society where everybody kind of contributes to each other. They think they're safe. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you gotta also remember there is enemies. You gotta find them. You gotta find the snakes in your grass because you don't want to get bit by it. It's just the moral of all these stories. Find what's wrong, and then you can live in harmony for a period of time, because eventually chaos always comes back around. Because again, spring, right? The winter, you go through winter time. You go up to spring, right? Everything is flowering, everything is nourishing. Then you have summer. You go all the way to the top, and then you have to hit the fall. So you got to come back. Woof. How you go back from that fall, and that's on you too. Because sometimes you skip a season, right? But you have enough energy coming down that you skip the season. Then you go up to whatever it is that you want to go. But again, I always tell you, eventually you keep skipping seasons, that means you're not gathering a certain amount of energy. If you don't gather the right amount of energy, eventually after a couple of hills, you're going to end up rocking yourself back. And you get stuck in the winter for a long time. And if you get stuck in the winter for a long time, then you know what happens. Winter doesn't bring a lot of good things. It just brings chaos. And most of it is sickness. It's harder to, in a sense, kind of harder to like live in winter months. Just because you're just limited on certain food that you can intake. Not a lot of things grow in the winter. Especially when there's winters where it's really harsh, where there's a lot of snow. You can't cover a lot of land naturally. There's means around it now that we have figured it out. But again, that's people learning from their ancestors. Hey, I'm going to learn from my ancestors on what not to do. It's a perfect example. Like farming and all this other stuff. Medicine, we was going in the right direction, but we still think we are. I think the problem is with medicine is that we got greedy. Even with food, we got greedy. Like people became really greedy with food. Like, it's just like, it's just mass produced just to mass produce. So a lot of this shit is mass produced just to be mass produced. Like we should be mass producing whatever is worth to eat that season. Instead of, producing the same things over and over and over again. Like people just have the same diets. Again, what do you think with diets again now? What do you guys think? Nobody goes through the seasons. Nobody picks up the energies that they need to pick up. Go through your seasons. Pick up the right energy. If you don't, then again, the body's going to feel it. You're going to be out of the rhythm. If you're out of the rhythm, what do you think happens? You get out of the dance. Simple as it is. It's just how life works.